Okay, so for today, we're going to be looking at Imagism. And so it's a different style of poetry. And it's basically what they do is they take one single image and they write about it in their poem. And so they basically, right here, so we'll start here. Present a precise visual image through words. They use very exact, specific language. They don't generalize things. They use common language. They don't try to sound, uppity. They don't tend to use cliches. They don't get overly descriptive. It's very stripped down in the writing. It's free verse. It doesn't have much for rhyme schemes. Doesn't have a prescribed format, and you can use any topic for the poem. So people often are asked, why do they use so very little explanation and interpretation? And one of the biggest reasons is that they wrote in response to the Romantic writing that dominated before them. And so if you remember the Romantic era, they were very flowery in their wording, and they were very descriptive, and they used a lot of rules and formats and rhythms and rhyme schemes and meters, and it was very rigid in the writing style. And so they were responding to that, and so they decided to go the exact opposite. They were like the rebelling teenagers, and so they thought that Romantic writing was too wordy and imprecise, and it cared more for the format rather than the meaning and what they were trying to get across. And so they wanted to just focus on what were they trying to get across to the reader. And so they decided to basically get rid of the cluttered language, to get rid of all those extra words that were describing things, and just try to get their point across. They also rejected the idea that words could be decorative, so they liked to use as little language as possible to get their point across. So they drew connections between their poetry and the essence of life. Okay, so one of the imagists was William Carlos Williams. Born in New Jersey, 1883, attended University of Pennsylvania, where he met imagist Ezra Pound. Williams was not just a writer; he was a doctor. He interned in New York, in Germany. He had a medical practice in New Jersey, and he published his poetry with Ezra Pound's help. So he needed that other famous imagist poet Ezra Pound's help to get published. His reputation grew in America. He submitted poems and essays to small magazines. His poetry is considered experimental and focuses on images and experiences familiar to everyday people. And so William Carlos Williams obviously wrote in the style of Ezra Pound because he was kind of the person that helped guide him and was kind of his mentor. And so he gave the readers poems with very precise word pictures. They were very, you knew what he was talking about, but it also left quite a bit open to interpretation as well. And so generally did not assign meaning to the images they created. He simply just created an image and let the reader interpret it how they wanted. He believed that the readers were intelligent enough to understand what he was getting across or understand what the work was about, and that they could get their own meaning from the image. And so right here, this last line, images poems often give that opportunity for dialogue and artistic expression, and they give that opportunity for us as the readers to discuss what we think it means, what we got out of it, what we saw, what we were drawn to in the poem, and so that we can have that discussion rather than just saying oh, he's specifically talking about this and this is what he means. That is what is the draw of imagist poetry, is that it is completely open for us to interpret. Okay, so this is called the red wheelbarrow. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow. glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. And so make sure you watch this video. It'll be going through the thematic analysis of the poem. And so the question right here in the corner was, how does his decision to focus on the red wheelbarrow first affect how you view it? So he's looking, he says, it so much depends on the red wheelbarrow. It's glazed with rain and beside white chickens. By focusing on that, he makes it like the most important thing. It's the first thing your eyes are drawn to. It's the biggest thing in the picture. And you're going to, you know that is like the most important aspect of the image. You know, you could have been drawn to the chickens. You could have been drawn to the water. But instead, he wants you to focus first and foremost on the red wheelbarrow. Okay, so question up here is, in the red wheelbarrow, William Carlos Williams says that so much depends on the things described in the poem, but he doesn't elaborate. That's part of the imagerist, is that he doesn't elaborate. He leaves it to you. He doesn't say the meaning of the poem by telling you what depends on the wheelbarrow. He just says so much does depend on it. So he's leaving it open. What do you think depends on the red wheelbarrow? And so that was what the question we were asking is, what do you think depends on the red wheelbarrow? What is he saying in this poem? And so a lot of things could depend on, I put my answer right here, a lot of things could depend on the red wheelbarrow. So, you know, the chickens suggest that it could be maybe in a farm or in someone's backyard or somewhere where there is farm life. And so leads you to maybe think that it was working around in a farm. So a wheelbarrow would make the farmer's job easier. So the farmer would depend on the wheelbarrow. All of the animals, you know, okay, so all the animals probably depend on the wheelbarrow because the farmer brings the food to the animals, or the farmer harvests the food to take to the farmer's market to sell to people. So the market depends on the wheelbarrow, and the people that eat the food depend on the wheelbarrow to get the food to them. Right? So the more you think about it, the more things could depend on this one simple object that is in this image. And then the second part was, what is he saying in the poem? Well, everything's interconnected, is my opinion. Everything's interconnected. So you could expand out and keep expanding to say how all these things are dependent on this one simple wheelbarrow. And it shows that everything is connected in some way, and we all depend on simple things like this to get through our day. It's a completely old school technology that we still depend on. Okay. So here's another one. It's obviously a lot more writing than just the simple wheelbarrow one. So we started with a simple one with only like, 4 or 5 lines. And now we've got this one. It's a little bit longer. But it's still describing one single image. By the road to the contagious hospital, under the surge of the blue mottled clouds, driven from the northeast, a cold wind. Beyond the waste of broad muddy fields, brown with dried weeds, standing and fallen. Patches of standing water, the scattering of tall trees. All along the road, the reddish, purplish, forked, upstanding, twiggy stuff of bushes and small trees with dead brown leaves under them, leafless vines. Lifeless in appearance, sluggish, dazed, spring approaches. They enter the new world naked, cold, uncertain of all save that they enter. All about them the cold, familiar wind. Now the grass, tomorrow the stiff curl of wild carrot leaf. One by one the objects are defined. It quickens. Clarity. Outline of a leaf. But now the stark dignity of entrance. Still the profound change has come upon them. Rooted, they grip down and begin to awaken. Okay, so this is called Spring and All. And it's much longer, like I said, than the wheelbarrow. And the image that it's describing is very detailed and complex. However, it still captures that one image, and this is the image when winter ends and spring begins. And so some of the things to notice about the language, it starts off talking about contagious hospital. Wintertime, especially right around now, you know, you think about all the people that are getting the flu, all the people that are sick. Wintertime, you tend to you tend to link illness towards wintertime. So in the beginning of the poem, it's winter still, it's cold, everybody's still sick, the hospital is contagious. The description in the language is pretty dreary, right? So mottled clouds, cold wind, muddy fields, dried weeds that are falling and standing, right? Nothing sounds necessarily pretty. It's giving you that dreary, gray, wintry feel that we all know and love here in Michigan. Purplish, reddish. It's kind of descriptive in a way that it makes it seem like it's still just barren. And then using the purplish, the reddish, kind of gives it this blurry feeling, like he's not entirely clear on what he's seeing. It's almost like he hasn't quite put his glasses on yet. And then going on to the next one, how does the language and imagery in the second part of the poem change? So the first part is the wintry time. It's not very clear. It's cold. It's sick. It's just gross winter. And then sluggish, dazed spring approaches. So it's starting to wake up. It's slow. It's like when you wake up and you don't know what year it is. And then it starts to enter the world. You notice it starts talking about, it enters the world naked, uncertain of all. It talks about it like birth, right? So it's kind of suggesting that everything's starting over anew, just like when the birth of a new child. Spring is like birthing all of this new life to the world. And then you'll notice that as he continues on in the poem, it gets more and more clear. And so it starts off, it's lifeless, and then all of a sudden one thing enters and it's uncertain. It's still cold. It's still familiar, that wind of the winter. It's still there, but things are coming to life. Grass, tomorrow, the carrot leaf will uncurl, and then one by one things will get more clear. So it starts off very dazed and confused, and then towards the end here it starts to get that clarity. So now you're seeing the outline of individual leaves. You're seeing things come awake. You're seeing the roots grip down. They're going down into the earth, telling you that the earth is starting to unfreeze and thaw is the word I'm looking for. It's starting to thaw, and it's able to go into the dirt, right? So it starts off vague, cold, dead. Suddenly it's starting to waken up. It gets less cold. It's still cold, but it's starting to get alive and things start to grow. And so it gets alive, it gets more clear as the winter ends. And then there was another question down here. How might spring and all be interpreted as a reaction to violence of World War I? Well, so it starts off, it's all is dead, and this is kind of World War I. And then this is how life moves on. You're slowly coming back to life. You're slowly getting that new sense of the world. And it's all starting over anew. Okay, and then we have the great figure. And so it's among the rain and lights. I saw the figure 5 in gold on a red fire truck, moving, tense, unheeded, to gong clangs, siren howls, and wheels rumbling through the dark city. And so the red wheelbarrow and spring and all are a visual image and capture a moment. Great figure. Its images work because it has vibrant and specific images. However, while it also captures the image, it also adds sound. And so the question here was, which parts add sound to the poem? So there's the image of the fire truck, and then all of a sudden you hear gong clanging and sirens howling and wheels rumbling. So there's a single image, but there's also auditory. So this was a unique Imagist poem, and that it added the auditory aspect amongst the visual.